Have you ever wondered how an ancient civilization managed to transport massive stone blocks weighing up to 20 tons up nearly vertical mountain faces, then fit them together so precisely that you can't slide a knife blade between them? Or why the Inca would choose to build their most sacred city in one of the most inaccessible places on Earth? Tonight's journey will take you through the entire epic of Machu Picchu, the political intrigue that led to its creation, the astronomical knowledge encoded in its architecture, the dramatic events that caused its abandonment, and the painstaking detective work that continues to unlock its mysteries. From the golden age of the Inca Empire to the cutting-edge discoveries being made today, this is the complete story of the city hidden in the clouds. But before we dive in, if you're new to this channel, consider hitting that like and subscribe button if you haven't already. Your support means we can continue producing these highly researched videos to help you learn something new or pass the time. Also, let us know where you're watching from and what time it is. So, without further ado, let's begin, shall we? The Veil of Clouds, a palace in the sky, high in the Andes Mountains, where the air grows thin and clouds drift like living things. Stone walls emerge from morning mist. The Urubamba River carves its path through the valley far below, a silver thread winding between green peaks. This is Machu Picchu, suspended between earth and sky at nearly 8,000 feet above sea level. The site occupies a narrow ridge between two mountains. Huayna Picchu rises to the north, a sharp peak that overlooks the ancient city like a guardian. The mountain called Machu Picchu stands to the south, giving the ruins their modern name. Between these peaks, the Inca built their sanctuary of stone. Morning here arrives slowly. Fog rolls up from the jungle below, thick enough to hide the terraces and temples. Then sunlight breaks through. The mist burns away in patches, revealing stone walls that have stood for 5 centuries. Granite blocks fit together so precisely that no mortar holds them. Each stone was shaped to lock with its neighbors, creating walls that have survived earthquakes and storms. The city spreads across the ridge in careful sections. Agricultural terraces step down the steep slopes, held by retaining walls that prevented erosion. Above these terraces, the urban sector contains temples, residences, and plazas. Water channels carved into stone still guide spring water through the site, feeding fountains that once served the city's inhabitants. The construction demonstrates remarkable planning. The Inca chose this location with care, considering both practical needs and spiritual significance. The mountains surrounding the site held sacred meaning. The river below traced a path that mirrored the Milky Way in Inca cosmology. Every element connected the physical world to the celestial realm. Stone stairways climb between levels, worn smooth by centuries of feet. Narrow windows frame views of distant peaks. Doorways stand precisely cut, their lintels supporting tons of stone above. The builders understood weight distribution, drainage, and seismic stability. Their knowledge came from generations of mountain engineering, refined to near perfection. The setting itself speaks of isolation. No road reached this place in ancient times. Visitors arrived on foot, climbing paths that wound through cloud forest and along cliff edges. This remoteness protected the site. When Spanish conquistadors swept through the Inca Empire in the 1530s, they never found Machu Picchu. The city remained hidden, known only to local farmers who worked the surrounding valleys. Vegetation claimed the ruins slowly. Trees grew through plazas, vines wrapped around temple walls. The cloud forest, always pressing close, reclaimed what humans had carved from the mountainside. For nearly 400 years, moss covered the stones and orchids bloomed in the courtyards. The altitude creates unique conditions. Temperatures shift between warm days and cold nights. Rain falls frequently during the wet season from November to March. Clouds form in the valleys and rise, engulfing the site in white silence. These conditions shape daily life for the ancient inhabitants and continue to define the experience of visiting today. Standing among the ruins now, you can sense the original vision. The Inca didn't simply build on this mountain. They transformed it into something that honored both human ingenuity and natural majesty. Terraces echo the mountain slopes. Buildings align with astronomical events. Water flows as it did 5 centuries ago, following channels cut with patient precision. The stones themselves tell stories. Granite, quarried nearby, shows the marks of bronze tools and stone hammers. Some blocks weigh several tons, yet fit together with gaps too narrow for a knife blade. The surface treatment varies by building. Important structures received polished facades that caught the light. Service buildings used rougher stones, functional rather than decorative. This place existed beyond the reach of most people, even in Inca times. Scholars estimate the population ranged from a few hundred to perhaps 1,000 inhabitants during peak occupation, though this remains debated among archaeologists. They were likely nobles, priests, and servants who maintained this royal estate. The isolation ensured exclusivity. Only those granted permission by the Sapa Inca could walk these paths. The surrounding landscape remains largely unchanged since Inca times. Dense forest covers the lower slopes. Orchids and bromeliads grow in the tree canopy. Spectacled bears, the only bear species native to South America, still roam these mountains. Condors circle overhead, their massive wingspans unmistakable against the sky. The river far below continues its endless journey toward the Amazon basin. Machu Picchu represents a moment frozen in stone. It captures the height of Inca architectural achievement, built during the empire's golden age. The city functioned for less than a century before its abandonment, a brief moment in human history. Yet those stones remain, patient and enduring, waiting for clouds to part and reveal their secrets once more. The Inca vision, the children of the sun. The Inca called themselves the children of the sun. This wasn't mere poetry. Their entire civilization organized around Inti, the sun god, whose daily journey across the sky governed agricultural cycles, religious ceremonies, and imperial authority. The Sapa Inca, the emperor, claimed direct descent from Inti. This divine lineage justified his absolute power and made his word law throughout Tawantinsuyu, the four quarters of the world. Tawantinsuyu stretched from modern Colombia to Chile, encompassing mountains, deserts, and jungles. At its height in the early 1500s, the empire governed perhaps 12 million people. They spoke different languages, practiced different customs, yet all acknowledged Inca supremacy. This vast territory was controlled from Cusco, the navel of the world, where the Sapa Inca resided in golden splendor. The Inca worldview recognized three realms. Hanan Pacha, the upper world, belonged to the gods and celestial beings. Ke Pacha, the middle world, was home to humans, animals, and plants. Uku Pacha, the inner world, housed the dead and the seeds of future life. These realms weren't separate but interconnected, and certain places served as bridges between them. Mountains held particular sacred power. The Inca called them Apus, divine beings who watched over communities and controlled weather patterns. The highest peaks received offerings and prayers. Pilgrims climbed to summit shrines, bringing coca leaves, cloth, and sometimes sacrificial llamas. Archaeological evidence from high-altitude sites confirms these practices. Frozen mummies found near mountaintops, like preserved by ice and cold, demonstrate the extent of mountain worship. Pachamama, the Earth Mother, governed fertility and harvests. Farmers made offerings before planting, pouring chicha, corn beer, into the soil. They thanked Pachamama for each harvest, recognizing that human survival depended on her generosity. This relationship between people and land wasn't exploitative, but reciprocal. The earth gave life, and humans showed gratitude through ritual and respect. Water possessed sacred qualities. Rivers connected mountains to lowlands, carrying divine energy from snowmelt to ocean. Springs emerging from rock were especially holy, regarded as tears of the mountains. The Inca engineered elaborate water systems, not just for practical irrigation, but to honor these sacred flows. Channels carved into bedrock guided water to fountains and pools, transforming necessity into ceremony. The Inca built to last. Their architecture reflected permanence and divine authority. Stone, especially granite and andesite, provided the primary building material. These volcanic rocks, hard and durable, could be shaped with patience and skill. The finished structures demonstrated imperial power. Walls that would stand for centuries announced that the Inca ruled forever. Construction itself held spiritual significance. Workers sang while shaping stones, their rhythms, coordinating labor, and honoring the rock. Modern studies of Inca sites reveal acoustic properties. Plazas amplify sound in particular ways. Certain chambers create echoes or resonances. Whether these effects were intentional or fortunate remains debated, but they added layers of experience to ritual spaces. The Inca practiced reciprocity at all levels. The empire extracted labor from conquered peoples through the meta system, a form of taxation paid in work rather than goods. Communities sent workers to build roads, farm state lands, or serve in the army. In return, the empire provided security, infrastructure, and support during famines. This exchange wasn't equal by modern standards, but it followed a logic of mutual obligation that made sense within Inca culture. Religion and state functioned as one. The high priest held power second only to the Sapa Inca and sometimes came from the same royal family. Priests interpreted omens, conducted sacrifices, and maintained the calendar that regulated agricultural and ceremonial life. Their knowledge encompassed astronomy, weather prediction, and agricultural science. What we might separate into different disciplines, the Inca understood as interconnected wisdom. Sacred sites, called huacas, dotted the landscape. These could be rocks, springs, caves, or mountains. The Inca mapped networks of seques, ritual pathways radiating from Cusco like spokes on a wheel. Each seque connected multiple huacas, creating a geographic calendar. Communities maintained specific seques, performing ceremonies at designated times. This system organized space, time, and social responsibility into an integrated whole. The Inca worldview shaped their approach to landscape modification. They didn't see themselves as conquering nature, but as working with it to create harmony. Terraces prevented erosion while expanding agricultural land. Canals brought water where it was needed. Buildings incorporated living rock, leaving boulders as parts of walls or altars. The result was architecture that grew from the mountain rather than imposing upon it. Gold, to the Inca, was the sweat of the sun. Silver was tears of the moon. These metals served religious and ceremonial purposes rather than monetary ones. Temples gleamed with gold sheeting. Ritual objects, from ceremonial knives to drinking vessels, displayed incredible craftsmanship. The famous Garden of the Sun in Cusco reportedly contained gold and silver replicas of plants and animals, a miniature world crafted from sacred metals. Inca religion incorporated conquered people's beliefs. Rather than replacing local gods, the empire added them to a growing pantheon. Local huacas received recognition, though Inti remained supreme. This flexibility helped maintain stability across a diverse empire. People could worship their traditional deities while acknowledging Inca supremacy, reducing resistance and rebellion. The concept of Aini, reciprocal exchange, governed social relationships. Families helped each other with harvests. Communities shared labor on irrigation projects. Even the relationship between rulers and subjects followed this pattern, at least in theory. The Sapa Inca provided order and prosperity. His subjects provided labor and loyalty. When this balance broke, when rulers failed to fulfill their obligations, the system weakened. This worldview, this understanding of divine order and reciprocal relationships, guided every aspect of Inca civilization. When Pachacuti ordered the construction of Machu Picchu, he wasn't simply building a palace. He was creating a place where stone met sky, where water flowed in sacred patterns, where the empire's power and the god's presence became visible in granite and terraces. The vision shaped the reality, and that reality still stands. The emperor's retreat, Pachacuti's dream. Pachacuti Inca Yupanqui transformed a small kingdom into an empire. His name means earth shaker, or he who remakes the world. Titles earned through conquest and innovation. Before his reign, Cusco controlled only the valley around the capital. By his passing around 1471, Tawantinsuyu stretched hundreds of miles in every direction. This expansion required military genius, but Pachacuti understood that empires need more than armies. He rebuilt Cusco as an imperial capital. The city's layout followed a sacred plan, shaped like a puma, with the fortress of Sacsayhuaman forming its head. Major temples received stone facades of such precision that Spanish chronicles struggled to describe them. The Coricancha, Temple of the Sun, became the empire's spiritual center. Its walls reportedly held 700 gold plates, each weighing 4 pounds. Gardens contained golden cornstalks and silver llamas, crafted by master artisans. Pachacuti understood architecture as political statement. Buildings demonstrated power, permanence, and divine favor. The finest structures used ashlar masonry, stones shaped so precisely they needed no mortar. Walls incorporated subtle curves that added strength and beauty. Doorways narrowed toward the top, a technique called trapezoidal construction that improved earthquake resistance. Every design choice served both practical and symbolic purposes. Royal estates allowed Inca rulers to project power beyond Cusco. Each Sapa Inca constructed his own country retreat, a place for rest, religious ceremony, and entertaining important subjects. These estates remained the emperor's property even after passing. His mummy, preserved and venerated, technically still owned the land. The new ruler needed to acquire his own properties, driving further expansion and construction. Machu Picchu served as Pachacuti's personal estate. Archaeological and historical evidence supports this interpretation, though scholars debated for decades. The site's layout, the quality of construction, and its distance from Cusco all suggest a royal residence rather than a military fortress or urban center. Spanish chronicles mention Pachacuti's properties in the Urubamba region, though they don't name Machu Picchu specifically. The city was likely abandoned before Spanish record-keeping began in earnest. The location offered strategic advantages. The Urubamba Valley provided fertile land for growing coca, a sacred plant used in religious ceremonies and valued by the nobility. The river also connected this region to lower elevations and eventually to the eastern jungles, sources of valuable tropical goods. Control of this valley meant control of important trade routes and agricultural resources. Building a city on this particular ridge required extraordinary effort. Workers quarried granite from nearby deposits, shaping stones with bronze tools and stone hammers. Larger blocks moved on log rollers and rope. Ramps helped raise stones to higher levels. The entire process demanded precise planning and coordination among hundreds of workers over many years. Estimates suggest construction took several decades, possibly beginning in the 1450s and continuing into the 1470s, though exact dates remain uncertain. The estate served multiple purposes. It provided a retreat where Pachacuti could escape Cusco's politics and enjoy mountain air. The site's remoteness offered privacy and security. Important nobles and family members received invitations to visit, strengthening loyalty through shared exclusive experience. Religious ceremonies took place in specially designed temples, connecting the emperor to the gods in spectacular surroundings. The estate also functioned as an agricultural experiment station. Terraces grew different crops at various altitudes, testing what thrived in specific conditions. This knowledge helped improve farming throughout the empire. Stone channels brought water from mountain springs, demonstrating advanced hydraulic engineering. These systems didn't just supply the estate's residents. They represented cutting-edge technology that could be adapted elsewhere. Pachacuti's vision extended beyond mere luxury. He shaped landscapes to reflect divine order. At Machu Picchu, natural and constructed elements merged seamlessly. Living rock became altar bases. Mountain peaks visible from the site aligned with solar events. The river's curve below echoed the Milky Way's path across the night sky. Every element reinforced the connection between earthly empire and cosmic design. The emperor likely visited Machu Picchu with his Panaka, his extended family group. These relatives formed his closest advisors and supporters. They would enjoy the estate together, strengthening family bonds while removed from the capital's intrigues. After Pachacuti's passing, his Panaka maintained the estate in his memory, ensuring its upkeep and periodic use. The workforce at Machu Picchu included Yanaconas, servants permanently assigned to noble households. They performed agricultural labor, maintenance, and domestic service. Some may have been mitama, colonists relocated from other parts of the empire to settle strategic areas. This mixing of populations helped integrate conquered territories into Inca culture while ensuring loyalty through dependence on imperial support. Construction quality varied by sector. The finest masonry appeared in temples and royal residences. Service areas and workers' housing used rougher techniques. This hierarchy in stone reflected social hierarchy in life. Where the emperor walked, perfection was mandatory. Practical spaces required only functionality. The difference remains visible today in varying stone finishes and wall treatments. Pachacuti died around 1471 or 1472, possibly in his 70s based on the approximate span of his reign. His mummy remained in Cusco, venerated as an ancestor who could still speak through priests and offer guidance. His estate at Machu Picchu continued functioning, maintained by his descendants. They preserved the site as their ancestor had left it, a shrine to his memory and a testament to his vision. The emperor's dream became stone and terrace, water, and sky. He imagined a place where mountains touched clouds, where the sun blessed crops, where the empire's power became tangible. That dream endured decades beyond his lifetime, inhabited by those who remembered him and honored his legacy. Then circumstances changed. The Spanish arrived, the empire fractured, and the dream fell silent, waiting centuries for new admirers. The stonemasons whisper, crafting a city from the mountain. The granite used at Machu Picchu came from the mountain itself. Outcrops of suitable rock existed within the site boundaries and on nearby slopes. Workers identified strong stone with consistent grain, free from major fractures. They broke larger pieces into manageable sizes using a technique involving fire and water. Heat expanded the stone. Cold water poured over heated rock created stress fractures. Controlled cracking followed natural lines of weakness. Shaping these rough pieces into building blocks required patience and precision. Workers used river-smoothed stones as hammers, pounding harder rocks like hematite against the granite surface. Each blow removed tiny fragments. Hours became days. Days became weeks. A single block might occupy a mason for months, depending on size and required finish. The work demanded focus and skill, passed from master to apprentice across generations. Bronze tools helped refine surfaces. The Inca produced bronze by alloying copper with tin, creating metal harder than either element alone. Bronze chisels could score granite, though they dulled quickly. Workers sharpened them repeatedly, a steady rhythm of work and maintenance. The finest buildings show polish that suggests additional techniques, perhaps using sand and water as an abrasive, rubbing surfaces smooth over countless hours. Moving stones presented logistical challenges. Smaller blocks weighing hundreds of pounds could be carried by teams using rope harnesses. Larger stones required different approaches. Log rollers helped transport blocks across level ground. Ramps built of earth and stone allowed workers to drag blocks upward. Lever systems could shift position and orientation. The heaviest stones at the site weigh over 50 tons. Moving such masses demanded engineering knowledge and coordinated effort. The ashlar technique produced Machu Picchu's signature walls. Masons shaped each stone individually, fitting it precisely to its neighbors. They worked from bottom to top, placing the lowest course first. Each subsequent stone was shaped to fit the irregular surfaces of the stones already in place. The bottom of the new stone matched the top of the stone below. The sides matched adjacent blocks. No two stones shared identical shapes. This method explains the wall's earthquake resistance. The irregular interlocking prevented stones from shifting. When ground motion occurred, the blocks moved as a unit rather than separating. The technique also prevented moisture infiltration. Rain couldn't penetrate these tight joints. Internal fill consisted of smaller stones and gravel, providing drainage and reducing weight without sacrificing stability. Testing the fit required repeated lifting and adjustment. Workers would place a stone, check the contact points, remove it, and modify the surfaces. This cycle repeated until the fit met standards. Evidence suggests they used colored clay or pigment to mark contact areas, grinding away high spots revealed by the transferred color. The process was tedious but effective, producing joints that remained tight after 5 centuries. Different building types received different treatments. The finest structures featured walls with stones of varying sizes arranged in elegant patterns. Each face was polished, smooth, sometimes with a subtle bulge that caught light and added visual interest. These buildings marked spaces of religious or political importance. Their perfection announced sacred purpose and imperial power. Utilitarian buildings used rougher masonry. Stones retained chisel marks and unpolished surfaces. Joints were wider, though still weatherproof. These structures housed servants, stored goods, and served functional purposes. The difference in construction speed meant service buildings could be completed much faster than temples or residences. Resources focused on what visitors would see and what gods would judge. Water management required equal care. Channels carved directly into bedrock guided springs from higher elevations down through the site. Fountains received water in sequence, each feeding the next lower fountain. The system provided clean water for drinking, cooking, and ritual purposes. Stone surfaces were shaped to control flow rate and prevent erosion. Modern engineers examining these channels express admiration for their design and longevity. Drainage proved equally important in a place receiving frequent rain. Terraces included layers of sand, gravel, and stone fragments beneath the topsoil. These layers allowed water to percolate down without saturating the soil. Excess water drained through gaps in terrace walls. Buildings incorporated similar drainage features. Streets and plazas sloped slightly to direct runoff. The entire site was designed to shed water efficiently, preventing damage from the very element that gave the region life. The builders incorporated living rock into their structures whenever possible. Large boulders became foundation stones or parts of walls. Some were carved into altars or ritual features. This practice saved labor while creating spiritual connections. The building grew from the mountain itself, stone meeting stone in permanent union. The technique also improved stability, anchoring structures to bedrock. Construction occurred in stages over multiple decades. Archaeological studies reveal different building episodes identified through variations in technique and material. Early construction focused on terraces and infrastructure. Later work added the major temples and finest residences. Maintenance and modifications continued as long as the site remained occupied. The city never reached a final state but evolved with the needs of its inhabitants. Workers lived on site during construction seasons. Simple structures housed them, likely dismantled or repurposed once major work concluded. They received food, clothing, and coca leaves as payment for their labor. The Mita system ensured a steady supply of workers, rotating communities through annual service obligations. This allowed large projects to proceed without permanent workforce costs. The sounds of construction would have filled the site for years. Stone striking stone, songs coordinating group effort, commands shouted across terraces, the scrape of blocks dragging across ramps, water flowing in newly finished channels. Then, gradually, those sounds faded. The workers departed. Silence settled over finished walls, and the stones waited, patient and enduring, for the purposes they were meant to serve. The Labyrinth of Stone, a walk through the sacred plaza. Entering Machu Picchu from the main gate, visitors first encountered agricultural terraces stepping down the mountainside. These broad platforms held by retaining walls grew corn and potatoes. Beyond the terraces, a long stairway climbed toward the urban sector. Each step wore smooth from use. At the top, the city proper began. The urban area divided into distinct sectors. To the east, near the main plaza, royal residences and temples occupied prime positions. These buildings featured the finest stonework and commanded the best views. To the west, across the plaza, service buildings and workshops served practical needs. Housing for servants and workers occupied less prominent locations. The layout reflected social hierarchy in spatial terms. The royal tomb, though called a tomb, may not have held bodies. The structure consists of carefully carved stones forming a cave-like chamber beneath a temple. A large stone altar occupies the center. Steps lead down into the underground space where temperature remains cool even on warm days. The stone surfaces show incredible precision. Corners meet at perfect angles. The ceiling stones interlock like puzzle pieces. Some scholars suggest this space held mummies of important ancestors. Others propose ritual uses involving water or agricultural ceremonies. The truth remains uncertain. What's clear is the extraordinary care invested in its construction. Every surface received attention. The stone feels almost soft to the touch, polished to remove roughness. Light enters at specific angles, creating shadow patterns that shift with the sun's movement. Above the royal tomb stands the Temple of the Sun. This curved structure represents one of Machu Picchu's architectural highlights. The wall follows a natural boulder's contour, bending in a smooth arc unlike any other building at the site. Trapezoidal windows pierce the wall, aligned to admit sunlight during winter solstice. On that shortest day of the year, light enters one window and illuminates specific stones within. The temple's interior contains a carved altar. The base consists of the same boulder the outer wall curves around. The Inca shaped the rock's top into a stepped platform. The precision of these cuts, achieved with stone tools and bronze implements, demonstrates master craftsmanship. The surfaces remain level despite the boulder's irregular shape. Channels carved into the floor may have carried libations of chicha or blood from sacrificed llamas. The sacred plaza forms the city's ceremonial heart. Three major structures surround an open space. The Temple of the Three Windows occupies the eastern side. Its name comes from three large trapezoidal windows facing the sunrise. These openings, each taller than a person, frame views of the mountains beyond. During equinoxes, the rising sun shines directly through, flooding the interior with light. The temple's interior walls feature niches for holding sacred objects or offerings. These rectangular recesses appear in many Inca buildings, serving both practical and ceremonial purposes. Some may have held mummies during rituals. Others stored religious items wrapped in fine cloth. The niches' varying sizes suggest they accommodated different types of objects, each with specific ritual significance. The principal temple stands at the plaza's northern edge. This three-walled structure opens toward the plaza, allowing observers to watch ceremonies inside. The back wall rises to impressive height, built from enormous stones fitted with characteristic precision. One massive stone at the corner bears stress fractures, possibly from an earthquake centuries ago. Despite this damage, the wall stands, testament to the building's engineering. Inside the principal temple, an altar occupies the center. The stone bench along the back wall may have seated priests during ceremonies. The floor, while irregular, was carefully leveled in critical areas. Archaeological evidence suggests offerings were made here. Fragments of pottery, burned organic material, and other traces hint at complex rituals now lost to time. The house of the high priest sits adjacent to the principal temple. This building's quality matches the most important structures. Its entrance faces the sacred plaza, allowing the high priest to observe and participate in public ceremonies. Interior rooms include sleeping quarters, storage areas, and private ritual spaces. Stone pegs projecting from walls once held clothing or bags. Niches stored personal items and ceremonial objects. Water flowed through the sacred plaza area via carefully engineered channels. A series of fountains descended from higher elevations, each fountain feeding the next through stone-lined canals. These fountains served practical purposes, providing clean water for drinking and washing. They also held religious significance, honoring water's sacred nature. The first fountain, highest in elevation, received the purest water directly from mountain springs. The Intihuatana sits on a higher terrace, accessed by stairs from the sacred plaza. This carved stone structure represents one of Machu Picchu's most famous features. Its name translates roughly as hitching post of the sun, or place where the sun is tied. The stone rises from a sculpted granite base, incorporating the living rock of the mountainside into its design. The Intihuatana's carved pillar points toward the sky. Its orientation aligns with astronomical events, particularly the sun's position during solstices. The structure functioned as a solar clock and calendar. Priests could track the sun's annual journey by observing shadows cast by the pillar. This knowledge determined planting dates, harvest times, and religious festival schedules. The Intihuatana connected temporal and spiritual realms, making abstract cosmic movements visible in stone shadow. The surrounding platform was shaped to provide clear sightlines to important peaks. From this vantage point, mountains sacred to the Inca remain visible. The builders placed the Intihuatana where earth met sky most dramatically. Standing beside it, you feel elevation and exposure. Wind moves freely here. Clouds pass at eye level. The placement wasn't accidental, but carefully chosen to maximize both practical function and spiritual impact. Near the urban sector's western edge, workshops and storage buildings served the estate's practical needs. Narrow doorways led to small rooms where craftspeople produced textiles, ceramics, and tools. Storage buildings, called kolka, held dried foods and other supplies. These structures used simpler construction than temples or residences, but still demonstrated solid engineering. Stone foundations supported walls made from fieldstone or even adobe bricks where appropriate. The residential area contained compounds for noble families and guests. These complexes featured multiple rooms arranged around small patios. Private fountains provided water. Some buildings had second stories, accessed by internal stairs. The rooms were small by modern standards, typically just large enough for sleeping and basic activities. The Inca conducted most daily life outdoors, using buildings primarily for shelter and storage. Walking through the site, following ancient pathways, you move between different functional areas. The routing isn't random, but carefully planned. Important buildings receive prominent positions. Ceremonial spaces occupy high ground with commanding views. Service areas hide behind walls or in lower elevations. The design channeled movement, controlling what visitors saw and when they saw it, building toward dramatic revelations of the most sacred spaces. The Temple of the Sun, where stone meets the cosmos. The Inca measured time through careful observation of celestial bodies. The sun's movements determined the agricultural calendar, marking planting and harvest seasons. The moon's phases guided religious ceremonies. Stars and constellations told stories and predicted weather patterns. The planet Venus, called Chaska, held special significance. Its appearances as morning and evening star marked different periods of ritual importance. At Machu Picchu, astronomical knowledge shaped architectural design. Buildings weren't simply placed conveniently, but positioned to align with cosmic events. Windows captured solstice sunlight. Walls echoed mountain profiles. The entire site functioned as a monumental calendar, connecting human activity to celestial rhythms. This integration of architecture and astronomy reflected the Inca understanding that earthly and heavenly realms mirrored each other. The Temple of the Sun exemplifies this astronomical architecture. Its curved wall follows a natural boulder's contour, creating a structure unlike anything else at the site. The east-facing windows admit morning sunlight year-round, but their true purpose becomes clear during winter solstice in June. At dawn on the shortest day, sunlight enters the northeastern window at a specific angle, illuminating particular stones within the temple. This phenomenon wasn't accidental. The builders calculated the sun's position during winter solstice and designed the windows to capture that precise angle. The alignment demonstrates sophisticated understanding of solar movements and the geometry required to predict where light would fall. The winter solstice held deep significance for the Inca, marking the sun's farthest journey from Earth before its return. Ceremonies on this day honored Inti and celebrated the sun's promised renewal. The Intihuatana served as the city's primary astronomical instrument. The carved stone pillar's shadow changed length and direction as the sun moved across the sky and through the year. At solar noon, when the sun reached its highest point, the shadow fell directly north or south, depending on season. During equinoxes, when day and night lasted equal lengths, the shadow behaved differently than during solstices. Priests trained in reading these patterns could determine the date with precision. The platform surrounding the Intihuatana was carefully leveled and oriented. From here, observers tracked not just the sun, but also mountains on the horizon. Several peaks visible from this vantage point held sacred significance. The mountain called Salcantay, one of the region's highest peaks, remained visible to the south. Veronica, another sacred mountain, rose to the north. These peaks marked directions and served as reference points for astronomical observations. Recent studies using computer modeling have identified additional alignments at Machu Picchu. The main axis of the city aligns approximately with the June solstice sunrise. This means someone standing in the sacred plaza during winter solstice would see the sun rise roughly along the city's central corridor. The alignment isn't perfect to modern measurement standards, but it falls within ranges the Inca could achieve with their tools and techniques. The Temple of the Three Windows incorporates solar alignments as well. During equinoxes, sunlight enters all three windows at dawn, flooding the interior with light. The effect would have been dramatic, transforming the dark interior into a space filled with golden illumination. This twice-yearly event marked the balance points between seasons, moments when day and night held equal power. The Inca recognized these transitions as sacred times requiring ceremony and offerings. Nighttime observations held equal importance. The Milky Way, called Mayu, the celestial river, dominated the night sky during certain seasons. The Inca identified dark cloud constellations within the Milky Way, seeing animals and shapes where we see only darkness between stars. These constellations moved through the sky in yearly cycles, appearing and disappearing with the seasons. The Urubamba River's curve below Machu Picchu reportedly mirrors the Milky Way's arc across the sky. This connection between terrestrial river and celestial river wasn't coincidental but deeply meaningful. Water and stars both flowed in cycles. Both gave life. The river watered crops. The stars marked time for planting those crops. Heaven and earth reflected each other, and Machu Picchu sat at the intersection. Some researchers suggest specific buildings aligned with stellar events. The Pleiades star cluster, called Kolka or storehouse, appeared in the evening sky during May, signaling harvest time. Its disappearance in April coincided with planting season. Whether any Machu Picchu structures specifically frame the Pleiades remains debated, but the importance of this constellation to Inca agriculture is well documented in Spanish chronicles. The observation of celestial events required trained specialists. Priests studied astronomy as part of their education. They learned to predict eclipses, track planetary movements, and interpret omens in the sky. This knowledge gave them significant power. Their ability to predict cosmic events reinforced their religious authority and the divine nature of Inca rule. When priests announced the proper day for the correct time for a ceremony, people obeyed. The integration of astronomy into architecture served multiple purposes. It demonstrated the ruler's connection to divine powers. It provided practical information for agricultural planning. It created spaces where cosmic forces could be honored appropriately. Standing in the Temple of the Sun during solstice, watching light illuminate the altar at precisely the predicted moment would have been an awe-inspiring experience, confirming the priesthood's wisdom and the god's presence. The Incas' astronomical knowledge came from generations of observation. They lacked telescopes or precise measuring instruments by our standards, yet they tracked celestial movements with remarkable accuracy. Their calendars synchronized with solar years. Their festivals occurred at astronomically significant moments. This achievement required patience, careful record-keeping, and intellectual sophistication that sometimes gets overlooked when discussing civilizations without writing systems. The stars above Machu Picchu appear the same as they did 5 centuries ago. The sun still rises over the eastern mountains and sets beyond the western peaks. The solstice alignments remain accurate, though no priests attend them now. The stones remember their purpose. The carved pillar of the Intihuatana still casts shadows that could measure time if anyone were counting. The cosmos continues its eternal dance, and Machu Picchu stands where stone meets sky, waiting beneath the stars. The terraces in the mist, farming the clouds. Agricultural terraces define Machu Picchu's landscape as much as its temples. These broad steps carved into the mountainside prevented erosion while creating level ground for crops. Without terraces, heavy rains would wash topsoil down the slopes, making agriculture impossible on such steep terrain. The Inca transformed an impractical mountainside into productive farmland through engineering and patient labor. Construction of terraces required extensive planning. Workers first built retaining walls using stones fitted without mortar. These walls, ranging from a few feet to over 15 feet tall, had to support tons of soil and withstand the pressure of saturated earth during rainstorms. The walls leaned slightly inward, improving stability. Drainage holes at the base allowed excess water to escape, preventing dangerous buildup behind the walls. Behind each retaining wall, builders created sophisticated drainage systems. The bottom layer consisted of large stones and boulders. Above this, progressively smaller rocks formed additional layers. Gravel came next, then sand. Finally, topsoil mixed with organic matter provided the planting surface. This layered approach allowed water to drain downward and outward through the wall while retaining moisture in the topsoil where crops could access it. The terraces at Machu Picchu numbered over 100 individual platforms. They covered the eastern and western slopes, maximizing available land. The largest terraces stretched hundreds of feet long and 30 feet wide. Smaller terraces filled odd spaces and connected different levels. The total agricultural area probably reached about 12 acres, enough to feed the site's inhabitants with some surplus for storage. Different terraces received different crops based on altitude and sun exposure. Lower terraces grew corn, a staple crop sacred to the Inca. The plant's tall stalks would have swayed in the wind, green against gray stone. Higher terraces supported potatoes and other tubers adapted to cooler temperatures. Archaeological analysis of soil samples reveals traces of these ancient crops, confirming what Spanish chronicles recorded about Inca agriculture. Corn held particular importance. The Inca brewed chicha from corn, a fermented beverage central to religious ceremonies and social gatherings. The best chicha came from specific corn varieties grown in optimal conditions. The Urubamba Valley's lower elevations produced excellent corn, but having productive terraces at Machu Picchu itself allowed the estate to be more self-sufficient. Fresh corn could be ground into flour or roasted and eaten directly. Potatoes provided reliable nutrition and stored well when freeze-dried into chuño. The process involved spreading potatoes on the ground during cold nights. The potatoes froze solid. During the day, people trampled them to squeeze out moisture. After several cycles of freezing, thawing, and trampling, the potatoes became light, dry, and shelf-stable for months or years. This preserved food sustained people through lean seasons. Quinoa grew at higher elevations, thriving in conditions too harsh for corn. This grain provided protein and essential nutrients. The Inca understood its value and cultivated it extensively. The plants produced colorful seed heads ranging from white to red to black. Archaeological evidence confirms quinoa cultivation at various Inca sites, though the extent of its cultivation at Machu Picchu specifically remains uncertain. Coca plants required careful attention. These bushes produced leaves containing alkaloids that reduced hunger, fatigue, and altitude sickness. Coca held sacred status, reserved for nobility and used in religious ceremonies. The leaves were chewed with lime to release their effects. Growing coca at Machu Picchu would have been challenging due to the altitude, but the Urubamba Valley's lower slopes provided ideal conditions. The estate likely controlled coca terraces at lower elevations, in addition to those on the main site. Water management made terrace agriculture possible. Springs on the mountain above the city provided reliable water year-round. Stone channels captured this water and distributed it throughout the site. A main canal entered the urban sector from the north, flowing past temples and residences. Branch canals directed water to fountains and eventually to agricultural terraces. The system operated by gravity, requiring no pumps or mechanical assistance. The water's journey began at carefully protected springs. The Inca built stone enclosures around these sources, keeping the water clean and preventing contamination. From there, channels carved into bedrock or built from fitted stones guided the flow downhill. The gradient had to be steep enough for water to move, but not so steep that it eroded the channel. The builders achieved this balance through trial and adjustment. 16 fountains descended through the urban sector in a carefully designed cascade. Each fountain consisted of a stone basin with a carved spout. Water flowed from the upper fountains to lower ones through stone channels. The lowest fountain probably fed irrigation channels leading to terraces. This system provided drinking water, supported hygiene, and watered crops from a single source, demonstrating efficient resource use. Irrigation channels between terraces directed water where farmers needed it. These channels, often carved directly into terrace walls, could be opened or closed to control flow. During planting and growing seasons, terraces received regular watering. During fallow periods, water could be diverted elsewhere. This flexibility allowed farmers to adapt to changing conditions and crop needs. The agricultural calendar followed celestial observations. Priests announced planting times based on solar and stellar positions. When the Pleiades reappeared in the dawn sky during May, harvest season began. When they disappeared in April, planting commenced. This synchronization with cosmic cycles ensured crops went into the ground at optimal times, increasing yields and reducing failures. Farmers at Machu Picchu worked year-round. Planting, weeding, watering, and harvesting followed seasonal rhythms. The terraces required constant maintenance. Retaining walls needed repair after earthquakes or heavy storms. Drainage systems had to be cleared of debris. Soil quality had to be maintained through composting and crop rotation. This labor sustained the estate's independence from outside food sources. Storage buildings, kolka, preserved harvested crops. These structures featured ventilation holes that allowed air circulation while keeping out pests. Dried corn, freeze-dried potatoes, and other preserved foods filled these buildings during abundant years. The stored food provided security against crop failures and supported the site's population during ceremonies or other events that interrupted normal work. Agricultural success at Machu Picchu represented triumph over challenging conditions. The site's altitude, steep slopes, and variable weather could have made farming impossible. Through engineering, careful observation, and persistent labor, the Inca created a self-sustaining community in the clouds. The terraces stand as monuments to this achievement, green platforms ascending toward the sky, holding soil and life against gravity's pull. Llamas and alpacas probably grazed on terraces too steep for crops. These animals provided wool for clothing, meat for special occasions, and transport for goods along mountain paths. Their manure enriched the soil, improving fertility. The animals represented wealth and were sometimes sacrificed during important ceremonies. Their presence made the estate more complete, adding movement and sound to the otherwise quiet terraces. The view from the terraces, looking out over the Urubamba Valley, must have inspired contemplation. Farmers working these platforms saw mountains rising across the valley, cloud forests below, and the river winding through it all. Their labor connected them to the land in immediate ways. They planted seeds, watched shoots emerge, tended growing plants, and harvested food that sustained their community. This direct relationship with agriculture grounded daily life in tangible, essential work. Today, the terraces remain mostly empty. Grass grows where corn once waved, occasional small trees take root in the rich soil, but the structures endure, their retaining walls solid, their drainage systems still functional. If someone planted crops tomorrow, the terraces would support them. The engineering remains sound 5 centuries later. The stones remember their purpose, holding earth, managing water, providing life. The quiet departure, the city's long slumber. The Spanish conquest of the Inca Empire began in 1532 when Francisco Pizarro and his small force arrived on the coast. They encountered an empire already weakened by civil war. 2 sons of the deceased Sapa Inca Huayna Capac fought for control. Atahualpa and Huascar divided the empire between them, each claiming legitimacy. This internal conflict made the Spanish invasion easier than it might otherwise have been. Pizarro captured Atahualpa through treachery at Cajamarca. The Spanish demanded a ransom of gold and silver to fill a room. The Inca complied, stripping temples and palaces of their precious metals. Despite receiving the ransom, the Spanish executed Atahualpa in 1533. With the emperor gone, the empire's carefully maintained structure began collapsing. Provinces rebelled, allies turned against each other. The Spanish exploited this chaos, establishing control over the highlands. Cusco fell to Spanish forces in November 1533. The conquistadors marveled at the city's wealth and architectural sophistication. They also began the systematic dismantling of Inca power structures. Temples were stripped of gold. Mummies of former emperors were confiscated or destroyed. The Coricancha, Temple of the Sun, became the foundation for a Christian church. The symbolic transformation announced Spanish and Christian dominance over indigenous religion. Machu Picchu's fate during this period remains somewhat mysterious. Spanish chronicles never mention the site by name. No records describe its capture or abandonment. This absence suggests the Spanish never reached it. The site's isolation protected it from the attention that destroyed or transformed other Inca settlements. While Cusco burned and its temples fell, Machu Picchu remained untouched in its mountain sanctuary. The estate likely lost its purpose soon after Cusco fell. With the royal family scattered or deceased, with the empire's administrative systems collapsing, maintaining a remote retreat became impossible. The workers and servants who kept the site functioning probably received no payment or supplies. The Mita labor system that provided rotating workers broke down. Without these support structures, occupation became unsustainable. Archaeological evidence suggests gradual rather than sudden abandonment. No signs of violence marked the site. Buildings weren't burned. Valuable objects weren't hastily hidden. Instead, the inhabitants seem to have departed in an orderly fashion, taking portable goods but leaving architecture intact. This pattern indicates planned withdrawal rather than emergency evacuation. The timing of abandonment likely fell between 1535 and 1545 based on archaeological evidence and historical context, though no definitive records exist. The civil war among Inca nobles continued during this period. Manco Inca, installed as a puppet ruler by the Spanish, eventually rebelled and established a resistance state in Vilcabamba, a region west of Machu Picchu. People fleeing Spanish control may have passed near Machu Picchu on their way to this refuge. Some residents might have joined this exodus, leaving the city behind. Why residents didn't use Machu Picchu itself as a refuge raises questions. Its remote location and strong defenses could have provided security against Spanish forces. Perhaps the site's small size limited its usefulness. Perhaps the sacred nature of the site as Pachacuti's estate made it inappropriate for military purposes. Or perhaps practical concerns like food supply and defensibility in prolonged siege made other locations preferable. The answers remain unknown. As people departed, nature began reclaiming the site. Cloud forest surrounds Machu Picchu, always pressing inward. Trees and vines grow quickly in this wet climate. Without constant clearing, vegetation overtakes stone structures within years. Moss covers walls, roots work into cracks. The forest, patient and persistent, gradually obscured the carefully constructed city. Local farmers in the Urubamba Valley probably knew about the ruins. Families living in the region for generations passed down knowledge of the stone buildings high on the mountain. Some may have visited occasionally, salvaging materials or using terraces for small-scale farming. But the site held no strategic or economic importance. The Spanish authorities, focused on extracting wealth and converting populations, never learned of its existence or saw reason to investigate remote mountain ruins. The city entered a long sleep. Centuries passed. Rain fell. Plants grew. Animals made homes among the stones. The fountains stopped flowing when channels clogged with debris. Roofs of thatch, never replaced, rotted and collapsed. But the stone walls stood. The terraces held. The temples remained. The city transformed from living settlement to silent monument hidden by forest and time. This abandonment preserved Machu Picchu. Cities that remained occupied were modified, rebuilt, or destroyed. Colonial buildings rose on Inca foundations. Churches replaced temples. The Spanish reshaped urban spaces to serve their purposes. Machu Picchu escaped these transformations. When people left, the city froze at that moment. Later visitors would find it much as it stood in the 1540s, a time capsule of Inca civilization at its height. Stories of lost cities circulated in Peru for centuries. Locals spoke of jungle-covered ruins containing treasures. Some expeditions sought these places without success. The cloud forests were dense, the mountains steep, the trails treacherous. Without guides who knew the way, outsiders rarely penetrated these regions. Machu Picchu waited undiscovered by the wider world, known only to those who lived in its shadow. The silence at the site must have been profound once the last inhabitants departed. No more voices calling across plazas, no ceremonies in the temples, no farmers working the terraces, just wind moving through empty doorways. Rain falling on stones that no one swept, clouds rising from the valley to engulf buildings no one occupied. The city returned to the mountain, becoming part of the landscape rather than separate from it. Birds nested in the eaves. Plants colonized the plazas. Small animals used the buildings for shelter. The city served new purposes, providing habitat for forest creatures rather than housing for Inca nobles. Life continued at Machu Picchu, but human life departed. The stones waited, the mountains stood, and the clouds rolled past year after year, century after century, keeping their secrets. The gentle revealing, Hiram Bingham, and the veil lifted. Hiram Bingham arrived in Peru in 1911 with academic interests and personal ambitions. The young Yale lecturer wanted to explore Inca ruins and hopefully discover something significant. He organized an expedition with funding from the university and private supporters. His team included a physician, a naturalist, and an archaeologist, plus hired assistants and porters. They planned to follow old Inca roads through the Andes, documenting ruins along the way. The expedition traveled from Cusco down into the Urubamba Valley. The region was sparsely populated, with small farms scattered along the river. Local officials sometimes helped Bingham, sometimes hindered him with bureaucratic requirements. He pushed forward, driven by reports of ruins in the mountains above the river. Several people mentioned stone buildings hidden by forest. The challenge was finding them. On July 23, 1911, Bingham and a small party left their riverside camp. A local farmer, Melchor Arteaga, agreed to guide them to ruins he knew about. The climb was steep and difficult. They followed a rough trail that crossed the river on a bridge of logs, then ascended through dense vegetation. The altitude and heat made the journey exhausting. Bingham later wrote about the discomfort and his doubts about what they might find. Halfway up the mountain, they encountered farmers living in simple houses. Two families had cleared small terraces and were growing crops. Is- These farmers, the Richarte and Alvarez families, knew about the ruins above their fields. They occasionally visited the old stone buildings. Their children played among the terraces. The ruins were part of their landscape, interesting but not remarkable. When Bingham asked about them, the farmers offered to show the way. The final approach took them through more dense forest. Then suddenly, terraces appeared. Stone walls emerged from the vegetation. Bingham began to realize the scale of what lay ahead. The farmers led him upward, following ancient steps. The urban sector gradually revealed itself. Buildings stood intact, their walls straight and strong. Windows framed views of the mountains. Doorways led to empty rooms. Bingham explored for several hours, taking photographs and making notes. The site exceeded his expectations. He recognized immediately that this was something significant, possibly the most intact Inca site discovered to that point. The fine stonework indicated royal construction. The temples suggested religious importance. The isolation explained why the Spanish never found it. Everything fit together in his mind, though he initially misidentified the site as Vitkos, a different Inca settlement. The vegetation obscuring the ruins presented challenges. Vines wrapped around walls, trees grew through plazas, moss covered stone surfaces. Much of the site remained hidden under this green blanket. Bingham could see enough to understand the city's layout and importance, but full documentation would require extensive clearing. He resolved to return with larger expeditions to properly study and photograph the ruins. Bingham returned in 1912 with a much larger team. Workers cleared vegetation, revealing the full extent of the site. Photographers documented every building. Archaeologists excavated carefully, looking for artifacts that might explain the city's purpose and history. The work continued through 1915, with Bingham directing multiple expeditions. He shipped thousands of artifacts to Yale for study, an action that later sparked controversy and repatriation demands. The expeditions produced detailed maps, hundreds of photographs, and crates of artifacts. Bingham published his findings in academic journals and popular magazines. National Geographic featured Machu Picchu in a major article, bringing the site to worldwide attention. Bingham's book, Lost City of the Incas, published in 1948, popularized the narrative of discovery that made him famous. He became permanently associated with Machu Picchu, though his interpretations of the site's purpose were sometimes inaccurate. Bingham initially claimed Machu Picchu was Vilcabamba, the last refuge of the Inca resistance. Later research proved this wrong. Vilcabamba lay elsewhere, deeper in the jungle. He also theorized the site was a refuge for chosen women, the Akla who served religious functions. This too proved incorrect. The evidence supports Machu Picchu as a royal estate rather than a hidden refuge or religious retreat for women. Despite these errors, Bingham's documentation provided the foundation for all subsequent research. The question of discovery requires nuance. Bingham was certainly not the first person to see Machu Picchu. Local farmers knew it existed. They lived nearby and used some of its terraces. Other visitors may have come and gone without recording their presence. Even other foreigners might have visited before Bingham without publicizing it. What Bingham accomplished was bringing Machu Picchu to international attention. He documented it systematically and shared those findings widely. Some earlier visitors left evidence of their presence. The name Lizarraga appears carved into a temple wall, dated 1902. Agustin Lizarraga was a local tenant farmer who visited the ruins years before Bingham. This graffiti proves that others explored the site and felt moved to leave their mark. Bingham likely wasn't even the first foreigner to visit. The region had seen various explorers and adventurers in preceding decades. The farmers who guided Bingham deserve recognition. Without Melchor Arteaga's willingness to lead the expedition up the mountain, without the Richart and Alvarez families showing the way through the forest, Bingham might never have found what he sought. These local people possessed knowledge that made the revelation possible. They opened the path, literally and figuratively, that brought Machu Picchu back into global consciousness. The revealing of Machu Picchu marked a beginning rather than an end. Bingham's expeditions were just the first of countless research projects. Archaeologists, historians, and scientists from around the world have since studied the site. Each decade brings new techniques, new questions, and new discoveries. The city continues revealing its secrets gradually, layer by layer, as patient investigation proceeds. The moment when Bingham first saw the stone buildings emerging from the forest represents a threshold. Uh, Before that moment, Machu Picchu existed in isolation, known only locally. After it, the site became part of global heritage. The change was irreversible. The hidden city had been revealed, the long slumber ended, and Machu Picchu began its second life as one of the world's most recognized and studied archaeological sites. The eternal sanctuary, Machu Picchu's legacy in the modern world. Tourism began gradually at Machu Picchu. In the 1920s and 1930s, reaching the site required significant effort. Visitors traveled by train to the Urubamba Valley, then climbed narrow trails on foot or horseback. Only the determined and adventurous made the journey. The site remained largely as Bingham had left it, cleared, but minimally developed. A few buildings received basic repairs to prevent further deterioration, but most of the city stood untouched. The Peruvian government recognized Machu Picchu's importance early. In 1981, the entire area became a historical sanctuary, protecting over 80,000 acres of land. The designation encompassed not just the ruins, but the surrounding mountains and cloud forests. This protection preserved the site's context, ensuring that the landscape Pachacuti saw remained largely unchanged. The same mountains rise, the same river flows, the same clouds drift past. UNESCO designated Machu Picchu a World Heritage Site in 1983. The recognition acknowledged both cultural and natural significance. The ruins represent outstanding human achievement in architecture and planning. The setting contains remarkable biodiversity with numerous endemic species found nowhere else. This dual designation as cultural and natural heritage is rare, highlighting Machu Picchu's unique value. Modern access has transformed the visitor experience. A road now winds up from the valley, carrying buses full of tourists. The Inca Trail, a multi-day hiking route, allows visitors to approach as the ancient inhabitants might have, on foot through mountain terrain. Trains run regularly from Cusco to the valley below. What once took days of difficult travel now requires just hours. This accessibility brought millions of visitors, but also created conservation challenges. The site receives over 1 million visitors annually, with numbers varying based on capacity restrictions and global conditions. This popularity creates enormous pressure on the ruins. Footsteps wear down stone stairs. Moisture from breath accelerates erosion in enclosed spaces. The sheer weight of human presence impacts the site's stability. Managing this pressure requires constant effort. Conservation work never stops at Machu Picchu. Teams of specialists monitor structural stability, treat deteriorating stones, and maintain drainage systems. The work follows strict protocols designed to preserve authenticity. Modern materials are used only when necessary and in ways that can be reversed. The goal is stabilization rather than reconstruction. The ruins should look ancient because they are ancient, not because someone rebuilt them to appear old. Academic research continues revealing new information. Ground-penetrating radar has identified previously unknown structures buried under courtyards. Analysis of skeletal remains from burials has provided information about diet, health, and genetic relationships. Botanical studies of stone samples have revealed which plants the Inca cultivated. Each technique adds layers to our understanding, though many questions remain unanswered. The ownership of artifacts removed by Bingham sparked international controversy. Yale University held thousands of items in its Peabody Museum for decades. Peru demanded their return, arguing the artifacts were removed without proper authorization. After years of negotiation and legal pressure, Yale began repatriating materials in 2011. The artifacts now reside in Cusco, displayed in museums where Peruvian citizens and international visitors can see them. Modern infrastructure serves the tourist industry. Hotels line the valley below. Restaurants cater to international tastes. Craft markets sell traditional textiles and modern souvenirs. The economic impact supports thousands of families. Tourism provides income in a region where economic opportunities are otherwise limited. This creates a delicate balance between preservation and utilization, between protecting the past and supporting the present. The site inspires artists, writers, and photographers. Countless images capture the morning mist rising off stone terraces. The iconic view of Huayna Picchu towering behind the ruins appears in millions of photographs. Painters interpret the ruins in various styles. Writers find metaphors in the stones and terraces. Machu Picchu has become more than an archaeological site. It functions as a symbol, an icon representing human achievement and mysterious beauty. Scientific questions persist despite decades of research. Exactly how many people lived at Machu Picchu? What were the social relationships among residents? How did the estate connect to other royal properties? Why was this particular ridge chosen? Some questions may never be fully answered. The site guards some secrets, withholding definitive evidence, leaving room for interpretation and continued investigation. Climate change poses threats. Shifting weather patterns affect rainfall. More intense storms cause erosion. Changes in vegetation patterns alter the site's microclimate. Researchers monitor these changes, trying to predict and mitigate future damage. The ruins survived 5 centuries of abandonment, but they face new challenges in an era of environmental transformation. The relationship between Machu Picchu and indigenous communities has evolved. For decades, the site was managed primarily by outside experts. Increasingly, descendants of the Inca and local communities participate in conservation, interpretation, and management. This shift acknowledges that Machu Picchu isn't just a historical site, but part of living cultural heritage. The stones belong to Peru, and particularly to people whose ancestors built them. Educational programs bring Peruvian students to the site. Many children from Cusco and surrounding regions visit as part of school curricula. These programs aim to foster pride in cultural heritage and understanding of history. The students learn about the Inca not as distant historical figures, but as ancestors whose achievements remain visible. This connection between past and present strengthens cultural identity. Virtual access has expanded reach beyond physical visitors. High-resolution photographs allow people worldwide to explore the site online. Virtual reality experiences offer immersive tours without travel. These technologies democratize access, but can't fully replicate the experience of standing among the stones. The difference between seeing and being there remains significant. The stones radiate presence that photographs can't capture. The wind moving through empty doorways speaks in ways that virtual experiences miss. Machu Picchu endures as testament to human creativity and perseverance. The Inca transformed an improbable location into an elegant city. They worked with stone and water, mountain and sky, creating something that functioned both practically and spiritually. 5 centuries later, their achievement inspires awe. The precision of the walls, the integration with landscape, the astronomical alignments all demonstrate sophisticated knowledge applied with master skill. The morning mist still rises as it did when the city was inhabited. Clouds form in the valley and drift upward, engulfing terraces and temples. Then sunlight breaks through. The stones emerge from white obscurity, solid and enduring. Water still flows in some of the ancient channels, following paths cut half a millennium ago. The mountains stand unchanged. The river winds below. And Machu Picchu rests between earth and sky, a sanctuary built by one civilization, preserved by time, and treasured by the world.